I'm seeing a lot of coverage that the hunger strikes worked and that Elbit lost a £2 billion contract with the UK government. Let's be clear, the British government did not just suddenly grow a conscience. It made a messy, delayed procurement decision and then tried to sell that to you as a moral concession. The hunger strikers forced a political crisis, yes, but the £2 billion Elbit contract was already in deep trouble for other reasons. The state is using the timing to look humane, but nothing has changed about the war machine. So first, the contract. The contract was a £2 billion contract to train 60,000 British troops. There were two contenders in this process, Elbit and Raytheon. Raytheon have won this contract now. Let's be clear, the war machine isn't slowing down. Elbit just lost this deal. The contract was rotten before the hunger strikers. Let's go back to February 2025, inside the Ministry of Defence. A whistleblower dossier emerges. I covered this on my channel at the time. Brigadier Philip Kimber had been caught in the revolving door. What this means is he had first worked inside training programs for the Ministry of Defence and then left that job and joined Elbit. There are strict rules on this. You're supposed to have a cooling off period, but he sat in on meetings about this exact contract. The whistleblower dossier also showed that senior MOD officials took dinners with Elbit and trips to Jerusalem. The decision to go with Raytheon instead of Elbit as the vendor for this training had nothing to do with Gaza, nothing to do with morality, nothing to do with hunger strikes. There was already corruption risk and process risk inside the Ministry of Defence. After that whistleblowing scandal emerged, they did nothing for 7 months. It's only when journalists start to ask questions that they then wake up and do a review. Meanwhile, in other parallel track, NATO starts to look into Elbit also because of corruption, not because of the making of weapons. At this point, to all Western war hawks, Elbit is starting to look like an unreliable business partner. By late 2025, the MOD start drawing a backup plan in case this contract collapses. This all happened before the hunger strike even began. Now switch to the prisons. From November 2025, Palestine Action prisoners start their rolling hunger strike. Their demands are clear and concrete and extremely reasonable. They ask for bail, a fair trial, stop treating us like terrorists, reversal of the terror ban on Palestine Action, stop the state doing business with Elbit, and end censorship and degrading prison conditions. As the days tick by, families and doctors warn that these people will die. Government ministers refuse to meet any of their lawyers or family. And the line from the government remains, we do not treat these prisoners differently, while using the separation of power as a shield. At around 70 days, there's one small move. Prison healthcare bosses agree to meet lawyers and medics. This is about basic medical care, not policy, not demands. So at this point, the government has not given bail, has not lifted the terrorist label, has not addressed the ban on Palestine Action, has not closed any Elbit sites, has not stopped arming Israel. Then suddenly the timelines collide, and on day 73 of the hunger strike, this news is announced that Elbit has not won this £2 billion contract. What's not being said in this coverage is that that contract is going to Raytheon instead. Raytheon UK are the British arm of the American weapons giant Raytheon, trading as RTX. This is the same Raytheon whose bombs and missiles are also still being used in Israel. On paper, campaigners can say that Elbit lost this massive deal. And yes, years of action, including this hunger strike, have made it politically uncomfortable to do business with Elbit. But it's only a partial truth, because they were also genuinely very corrupt in how they procured contracts. Brigadier Philip Kimber being a perfect example of the revolving door. But look at it from the state side. The contract was already legally and politically messy. There had been a whistleblower and NATO investigations into corruption. Before anybody went on hunger strike, the MOD had delayed their decision and created a contingency plan. Ministers knew that they could not publicly defend Elbit while prisoners were visibly starving in protest, so they chose Raytheon instead. This solves 3 problems at once. Firstly, it keeps the training plan alive. Secondly, it distances the MOD from a company who's being investigated by NATO for corruption. And thirdly, it lets the government claim that they have listened to the hunger strikers, but without granting bail, without changing the law, or without reviewing the prescription of Palestine action. This is political judo. Take the energy of the hunger strikers and redirect it onto a decision that suits the state. So let's separate the real material changes from the spin. It is good that Elbit are not going to get a £2 billion training contract with the MOD. Yes. That is a blow to Elbit's UK ambitions. One small concession is that Heba Morassi has been moved back to a prison closer to her family, and now some prisoners are getting their long withheld mail and books. Meetings are happening between prison healthcare leads and prisoner representatives, but these are about medical care. What has not changed structurally is that the UK government is still deeply embedded in the supply chains that arm Israel. Solidarity with Palestine action remains illegal in Britain. We need to read this as propaganda still. Zoom out. Why is the headline "Elbit loses contract after hunger strikes" everywhere? Because it is the perfect story for the government. It costs them nothing. The contract is still going ahead with another arms dealer. And in my opinion, having studied Raytheon for years, they are way worse. The only thing we can say to differentiate them is that they're not an Israeli company, they're American. But they are way more organized and established, and their goal is not to just defend their ethno-state, their goal is to take over the fucking world. The second reason why this headline is everywhere is because it cools public anger. People can now say the hunger strike worked and then stand down and stop paying attention. And this is how the British Empire has always dodged accountability or reform. Britain will happily switch from one genocide-linked supplier to the other, so long as the war machine keeps running. The lesson to draw from this is not a cynical, nothing changed, nothing ever changes. Don't go down that road. The lesson here is that direct action over years, plus some personal sacrifice, made it politically toxic to work with Elbit at this key moment. What we need to learn from this is that when challenged, the British state simply swapped providers. They did not change or acknowledge their role in the larger system of militarism and apartheid. Celebrate and encourage any win. This is still a glimmer of joy. Celebrate the courage of the hunger strikers who put their lives on the line to make political reform happen. But keep explaining cleanly that Raytheon is not an alternative. And sitting on that contract for 7 months and then using this information now shows you exactly how the British imperial model has always used timing and framing to make it feel like you have achieved concessions when really nothing has changed. This is not closure. This is a case study in how power bends but does not break under pressure. Keep fighting for an end to UK complicity in militarism.